What happens if America now starts buying Bitcoin and does less and less regulations on Bitcoin, and then they don't let El Salvador do the same? The IMF. That's an interesting dynamic between America and the IMF even.
Yeah, and El Salvador has front run everybody, so even if that plays out, they could still come out ahead. You know what I mean? There's so many different factors there. If the U.S., the U.S. could certainly print money to buy Bitcoin, but then what happens to the dollar? And in the end, who owns the most amount of Bitcoin? It's going to be interesting to see for sure.
It's just fascinating for me that Saylor has 500,000 Bitcoin. I mean, Saylor not, but Strategy, but like that is just starting in 2020 and having so many. That's kind of amazing. It makes you wonder what if someone like Saylor would be now the president of America. They can acquire like 4 million Bitcoin, if they are really aggressive with it, especially with the buying power of the central bank, basically.
Right. Yeah, that would be incredible. And, that kind of speaks to my point of let's champion incremental improvements. We have someone in the White House who is not hostile to Bitcoin. And then maybe next we get someone who is pro Bitcoin. And then maybe one day we have a Saylor as president, right?
A lot of people also hyped the last election between Biden and Harris and Trump then as a fork in the road. And I think a lot of Bitcoiners also see Bitcoin almost like a fork in the road of, are we going down a sound money, non-surveillance kind of a road, or are we going down the CBDC and digital euro and that kind of a road? Are we now, with America being on the right side of the history, at least as it seems right now, already on the path to the Bitcoin world, or is that fork, do you think, still in front of us?
I think there's a few things that need to play out before we finalize which direction we've gone. And one of those things involve more privacy tools built on Bitcoin. So we saw, the aggressive shutdown of mixers. Those were significant tools that Bitcoiners and people in crypto could use to remain anonymous. Or, I want to say that we have made a significant step towards hard money and Bitcoin. But the one thing that I want to make sure that doesn't get lost in the conversation is that when we talk about Bitcoin as freedom money, we're really referring to Bitcoin that has not been KYC'd, that's not controlled by an institution or fully traceable by the government, the way that the dollar is, a digital dollar. And so we need to either champion non-KYC Bitcoin or abolish the AML laws or build more privacy tools so that we can use Bitcoin in the way that it was always intended to be used.
How easy is it in America to get non-KYC Bitcoin? The European Union definitely wants to make it more difficult right now.
Yes, it is very difficult.
So you have to go basically to buy. Do you have some platforms, like I think in Switzerland we have Beach Bitcoin, where you can buy non-KYC Bitcoin on a platform. So is there things like that in America?
Yeah, so I think BISC is probably the most popular here. And you can still buy small amounts at a lot of the ATMs, but it is getting harder and harder. And it's going to continue to get harder.
There's a real, is that maybe even the most important battle in Bitcoin, the privacy battle?
I think probably, because if we end up with all of our Bitcoin in the existing traditional financial structures, then it's not that different than a digital dollar. It is, in the sense that you can get it out with the privacy tools and mixers and, a little bit of technical skill, of course. But what I don't want to see is just the recreation of fiat structures on a blockchain. As we're seeing with some of these other shitcoins like Ripple and Ethereum, obviously that is just nonsense. But this is still a factor in Bitcoin development. And so I think this brings us back to the importance of fighting the regulation. And, there's a lot of studies that have been done that since the AML, KYC, anti-terrorist, money laundering laws were put into place in order to surveil the shit out of everyone globally using the dollar, they're not stopping any terrorism. They're not stopping any crime, right? These things are really just tools of control and surveillance. And so to me, the best hope is in not only building privacy tools, but fighting the regulation. It's mainstream conversation now to say we might shut down the IRS. We might shut down all of these alphabet agencies. And so we need to add into the conversation, let's also shut down the Bank Secrecy Act, get rid of AML regulation, and then we've achieved real freedom.
How much has changed actually on the street sentiment around the election? I mean, from just a European standpoint, a lot has changed of like how I look at America from 2 points of like the mainstream lens. It's always funny to look into that, and just like my American friends and Twitter and how I see that, it's way more hopeful. It seems like people are like, hey, like maybe it's actually going in the right direction, even though people are sometimes disappointed with the shitcoinery and the Trump meme coin and all those things. But I think if you're focused on like the big things that are happening, like Ross is free, I think not enough people talk about that. Like there was some tweet that I really loved. Some like, oh, like sometimes I just think about shitcoining and this and that, but then I remember Ross is free. How amazing is that? So what I want to get at is how is it in America, the sentiment shift in maybe also in your area, in your friend circles, your family circles, in where you live?
I am full of hope, and everybody I know is full of hope and excitement again, excitement for the future, for what we could build and what our lives might look like. I think there's still a small percentage of people, these really ingrained people on the left that are very far left and very dug into the propaganda, who are terrified. So we still see a little bit of a divide, but more and more people are waking up to the corruption that Trump and his new cabinet are fighting. I think they're uncovering all of these different things. Every day we wake up and there's some new nonsense that has been uncovered. But instead of nonsense being uncovered, like, oh, I can't believe they're doing this, what we're seeing is, look at what they were doing and we have stopped it. And so how can you not be excited about that? You know what I mean? I'm excited. I'm very hopeful. We're seeing insane budget cuts and insane amounts of corruption being shut down. Of course, there's always, the bar kind of gets moved from the purists. But there's so much to be excited and hopeful about. And it's an incredible thing to be alive for and live through.
So you've heard Bitcoin is the new gold rush by now. As world leaders on all sides have endorsed it as the future of money, and now you're looking to get started, we'll show you how. It's actually easier than you think. First, go to your nearest ByteFederal ATM and turn your cash to coin. ByteFederal has over 1,200 locations around the country with the highest daily limits. Go to our website, ByteFederal.com, to find the nearest ATM to you. Log in to any wallet, then create an account, deposit your US cash, and instantly convert it to Bitcoin. That's it. We are the only US manufacturer and operator in the Bitcoin ATM industry, and our US-based live customer service is second to none. Go on, give it a whirl, and don't get left behind. Click the link below.